Okay, are there any questions?
Do you have as many habits as Blake?
I'll answer that later because I noticed Patricia had a question.
I was wondering about your walk-in meditation.
Could you talk into the microphone?
I was wondering about your walk-in meditation and how you go about doing that.
Yeah, so I'll talk about that. So walking meditation, there are many ways to do walking meditation. So let's see, I'll ask Blake to get up and demonstrate for the people in the room. And the people not in the room, well, I'll just, so you can see him. There you go. So walk towards the camera, Blake. So you notice where his hands are, they're in the center of his body. And now turn around, because you're getting out of the camera. And we walk at a kind of normal pace. Okay, thank you. And there's some forms of Buddhism like Soto Zen and some of the Theravada schools where they walk very slowly. You know, you put your heel down and then you put your center of the foot down and finally you get to the, what's the stuff at the top, and then you lift yourself off by your toe, and at that point your other foot has been coming down and it's like very slow. I have a bad sense of balance. I can never do that. I just sort of fall down if I try. And then Japanese rinzai, sometimes they walk really fast. Boom, 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 you know. But the thing about walking meditation is, what do you do with your mind? So it's very important, like when we do walking meditation in this room, which we do on retreats, or when we have more than one sitting period to break it up, then you walk around. We have these really cool paintings and calligraphies and the bell and this interesting stuff on the altar and that funky statue and, you know, all this stuff. And you look out the windows and there are trees and things like that, you know. And so, oh, look at that. But you don't do that. You just keep walking. You don't let yourself get distracted. So that's really important. And we always recommend people keep their practice going. So if you're counting your breaths, you count your breaths. If you're doing a mantra, you do a mantra. If you're doing great, whatever you're doing, you keep your practice going as you do walking meditation. And some people have walking meditation as a central practice. So they might do walking meditation for an hour. We use it just for a few minutes between sitting periods. Except sometimes if you're on a retreat in the country or something, then you might all go out for a whole meditation period. You might all go out and do walking meditation out in the country, which is really interesting because there's a lot of cool stuff to see. But you don't let your mind be pulled. You know, it's like you're out in this beauty, but you don't say, "Oh, look at that flower." It's just like, "Oh yeah, flower," you know, and you just keep going. Okay, so that's walking meditation. Yeah, thank you. And now you asked if I have more habits than Blake. So that gives me an opportunity to contradict what Blake said. So on the one hand, it is really important to have a regular practice. I can't say how important that is. That every day, and it doesn't have to be clock time, but every day at the same place. So for most people, it's you get up, you pee, you brush your teeth, maybe you take a shower at that point, maybe later, and then you sit. You know, that's how most people do it. You know, you sit, or maybe you chant, or maybe you bow, but it might not be the same clock time, but it's the same place in your schedule. And some people, you know, will do every day after work. They come home, maybe they have to do some grocery shopping, but then they do their practice. It's not recommended to do it just before bedtime because you get energy from practice and you can't sleep. But so, yeah, so this kind of regularity is very important. And it's nice to have other things that shore up, other things that are regular in your life. But I have to say, Blake, as you were talking, I thought of how privileged you are.
Oh, absolutely.
And how privileged we all are, that we can even consider something like that. You know, you think of like after this earthquake in Afghanistan, those people can't, you know, go to the gym on Monday, Wednesday, Thursday at 2 o'clock. They can't do that, you know? And so it's good to have things that support your practice, but the direction of practice is to have this strong center and this open heart and this clear mind. So whatever your situation, you can function. So even if you've just been in a terrible earthquake, even if you're in a war, you know, even if you're sick in a pandemic, whatever your situation is, you have that strong center and you have that open heart and you have that clear mind, you can function. So that's really important. So there's a guy who was a prisoner for a long time in California that I corresponded with, and he was in a dorm room. You can imagine what it was like. They didn't have stuffed animals, you know. It was a dorm room with these thin cots, 8 guys in this, you know, dorm cell, you know, 8 guys, you know, pretty much close together. And he would get up, I think it was like 3 in the morning or 4 in the morning, so he could sit for a half hour, an hour, whatever it was. That's tremendous discipline, you know, that's really fantastic. So, you know, if you can do it, yeah, absolutely. If you can find the space, even in difficult situations, absolutely do it, but understand that to be able to do it is a privilege. And that whatever develops through practice needs to be strong enough that even when we can't practice, we still have it. It still informs our lives. So that's very, very important. Yeah. Yeah, I tend to be a very unscheduled person. I'm your opposite. You know. Right. Yeah. Are there any other questions?
I had a question.
Sure.
I had a question on emotional trauma, I guess, and just pain. So with Zen, I guess, would that help with that, or is it with Zen a kind of different? Like I shouldn't aim for something like that. Does that make sense? I'm sorry.
So it makes a lot of sense. So yeah, a lot of people come to practice because they're in some kind of emotional pain. I know I certainly did. And practice can't remove the pain, but it can help us not be destroyed by it. So the hold, you know, pain like grabs you at the back, you know, the back of your neck, and it holds on and it just won't let go. If we practice, that can ease. And the pain, the emotional pain, might no longer control us. And notice I said might, because there's no guarantees. But that strong center, that open heart, that clear mind, that helps us not be pulled about by our pain. And I might add by our happiness. I mean, no one ever complains. I'm so happy all the time. You know, no one ever says that. But I remember once, you know, being in this situation. I mean, it was a long time ago, and cell phones weren't even in James Bond movies yet. You know, I mean, this was a really long time ago. And you know, I missed connection with my boyfriend, and I called, you know, from a payphone because the trains weren't running because it was a Sunday and I was supposed to meet him, and I was frantic, and I, you know, called his dorm room, and, you know, and his roommate answered because, you know, like you didn't have your own phone, and his roommate answered, and I said, you know, where's Les? You know, he's already gone to meet you, but I can't, you know, the train isn't going to leave for 3 hours. What am I going to do? And he said, don't worry, the sun is shining. And, you know, if I could have killed him through the phone, I would have. So happiness gets in the way too, right? You know? So yeah, happiness gets in the way. And so it's not to be pulled around, not to be pulled around, not to be pulled around. And you know, if people who are dealing with trauma, people who are dealing with emotional pain, I cannot recommend highly enough finding a good therapist, which I did a long time ago, and she was fantastic, and it was amazing. But Zen doesn't fill that slot. But whatever your situation, Zen can give you the kind of center and wisdom to deal with it, to function, not to deal with it directly, but to function despite it. But I really recommend it when people are in emotional turmoil, when people are dealing with trauma, whatever it is, I really recommend finding a good therapist as well. You know, it's like you don't go to a heart surgeon when you have a headache, right? And you don't go to a family doctor when you're having a heart attack. So each thing has its place, and they do support each other. So thank you for your question. Yeah. Let's see, I guess there's time for one short question. If there's a short question, I guess I give a short answer. That's, yes.
This is coming from left field maybe, but is there such
Well,
a thing?
take the microphone.
I guess my question is if there's such a thing as being bad at Zen, sort of.
Oh, I love that.
Like, so when I first started, I was saying, oh yeah, I can do this, but then after about a year, I said like, I'm pretty bad at this.
Yeah. That is such a great question. There's only one way to be bad at it, and that's not to do it. Because what happens is when, you know, we're bad at, like, our minds are distracted and stuff like that, we get to see, oh, our minds are distracted. Look at that. So you can't lose in this game. Now, the only way to be bad at practice is when you're sitting on the cushion, you're not doing it at all. So I told this story recently. I forget the context, but I'll tell it again. I was on this blind date, and, you know, I told him, you know, I just started doing meditation practice. Oh, I'm doing meditation practice. Oh, he said, I tried, you know, we're both academics. I tried going to the Quakers, and, you know, they sit in silence, and it was so boring. I just started writing a paper in my head. So that's bad practice, okay? But if you're sincerely sitting there, even when your mind is in turmoil or spacing out or whatever, if you're sincerely sitting there and you notice what your mind is doing, that's not a waste. You know, just like when on retreats, when we don't get much sleep and people fall asleep on the cushion, you never fall asleep for very long because you'd fall down, you always jerk yourself awake. But, you know, people fall asleep on the cushion and think, oh, this is terrible, I'm falling asleep during practice. But it's not terrible because you see your mind dissolving into sleep and your world disappearing as you go into sleep world, and then you see how your mind creates your world again as you wake up. It's a fantastic gift. You usually don't get to see that. You don't get to notice it. So you get to notice it. So this is a great practice because it's all good. You know? You can't lose. Yes? Oh, you need a microphone. You might take your mask off too.
I remember that there was a quote, it's best to have a mind of a wily fox when you're sitting than nothing at all. And whenever I get frustrated with how busy and spinning it is, it helps with compassion to think of it as a wily fox.
A wild fox?
Wily.
Wily fox.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. All right. So yeah, have compassion on yourself. Yeah, don't ever check yourself. Oh, I'm such a bad practitioner. Yeah, don't ever do that. Yeah. And don't ever compare your practice with anyone else's either. That's really important. Oh, this person goes to every single practice at the Zen Center, and they also, you know, do like, I don't know what, you know, like sit another 8 hours a day when they're not at the Zen Center. That's them. You know, you do what you do, other people do what they do. Everyone's doing their best all the time. That's actually what do you call it? A tautology. By definition, everyone's doing their best all the time, even if it's terrible. It's their best, you know, right? So, yeah. So thank you for your question. Yeah. And thank you. I love foxes, so thank you for your fox image. There was a fox walking on 9th Street the other morning as I was coming to practice. Right on 9th Street. Okay, so I think that's it for questions. If you want to